discussion on Parcel 9, the Haymarket Hotel project. And I'd like to start that now while this is tallied, so we move this along and we get to the wonderful NEMPAC presentation, which is actually what we're all waiting for, right? So I just want to ask some questions before we start the discussion. And the first thing I want to ask, I'm going to make this different than we usually do. It's going to be a little interactive, a little focus group, because I really want to understand what the membership feels about this. Because it is a parcel that's sort of on the periphery of the north end. It affects us, but it's not necessarily, inside.
Or one of the voting boxes is still here.
Oh, great, thank you. Oh, it would have been an odd tally. So the first question I want to know is how many of you know anything about the Parcel 9 Haymarket Hotel project? How many are familiar? So show of hands, about half of the people. I will ask, how many people read Matt Conti's article about that project today? If you haven't read it, it's very interesting. It's northendwaterfront.com. How many of you are aware of the redesign of the project that was submitted after the BRA went through a public process?
Not the BRA.
The Mass DOT went through a public process and a winning bid was selected. How many are familiar with the redesign? Okay. How many folks have seen the letter or know about the letter from the Mass Historical Commission that came out against the redesign? Okay. And how many of you have heard about or seen the letter from Representative Michael Witz, Councilor Lomatina, and Senator Petrocelli in support? Great. Who has seen the press release from Greenway, which announces their North End Parks $400,000 program, and also lays out some of the contributions that were made associated with Parcel 9? Okay. And how many of you know anything about what the Article 80 powers are of the BRA? That's a trick question because the answer is no one. Okay. Thank you. Thanks for everyone answering those questions. I want to ask Victor to speak for 5 minutes to just and really 5 minutes to just go over the bullet points of the history of this for those of you who aren't familiar with what's going on. You're on.
Well, you covered them pretty well, but if I have 5 minutes,
or less,
I'll fill in the time. Okay. Half a dozen years ago, more or less, the VRA did a study, or engaged a consultant to do a study about creating a market district. The consultant came back with, yes, that is in the area where Parcel 9 is, and the public market and the registry above it. The consultant came back with, yes, there could be a market district there. The Haymarket Pushcart Association should be the, quote, heart of the district. It performs a valuable public function, and it has been there for over 100 years, and it should say. So the BRA designated that area market district, and its own Parcel 9 is owned by Mass DOT. Mass DOT sent out a request for proposals, received 4 replies, and decided to reject all bids and to re-advertise. At that point, they created, I think I have the timing accurate, they created an advisory committee of which I was a member. The advisory committee met for, I would say, 4 years, sometimes once a month, and came up with a recommendation that was, well, the total recommendation was supported by everyone. Part of it was opposed by me. The recommendation was that there should and could be a higher building in excess of the 55-foot height limit on the Surface Road North Street corner, because
which is right next to the parking garage.
Next to the park, across the street from the parking garage.
Which is also high.
Because we were told by consultants that the Mass DOT had engaged that for economic reasons, in order to be able to afford to build a lower market hall, that you would need a high building on that corner. So that was agreed, and the project went out for bids again. It came back with only 2 bidders this time. One of them had a large, well, let me back up a step.
Remember
The specifications, is there a bell going to ring when we're?
Yes.
Yes, there will be.
The specifications published by Mass DOT had sketches showing a very low 1-story market building in the style of European market buildings of 150 years ago. That is glass and steel ribs. The proposal that came back from Normandy Real Estate Partners was for such a low building and a higher building on the corner. And that was to be a hotel. The second bidder came back with a proposal that was higher than the Normandy Real Estate proposal, which, in my view, blocked views of the historic Blackstone block. The rest of the advisory committee supported the higher one. I wrote a dissenting report supporting the lower one. Mass DOT awarded the bid to the bidder that I supported with the lower height, and with views of Blackstone block not being heeded. After the selection
So the selection at this point is done.
is done,
Bidding process closed, you're awarded the project.
yes, then the successful bidder changed his plans, added 2 stories to the building over on the corner, and added a 2nd story to the low market hall, which I have been opposing ever since. The BCDC, Boston Civic Design Commission, approved the change of massing and change of heights. The Mass DOT has approved it. I don't know whether they've executed a lease yet, but as a result of the increase in hotel height of 2 stories from 84 feet to 100 feet, the successful bidder gets 20% more hotel rooms, or keys as they call them. It goes from 187 to 225. Mass DOT has told me that he's paying them more because he's getting more hotel rooms. And recently, in January, the Massachusetts Historical Commission wrote a letter to everyone in sight saying they have objected, they have made a determination of adverse effect. That is, that the development proposed will have an adverse effect on the Blackstone block, a National Historic Site and the city landmark. Following that, our 3 elected representatives wrote a letter supporting the increased height. That's where it stands now, as far as the facts are concerned. I have some comments that I'd like to make later, but my 5 minutes is probably over.
Okay, all right. Well, I wanted to go through the facts. I'm wondering, does anyone have anything to add to what Victor said?
Yeah, I was a part of that process for 6 or 7 years. It was a public process that, despite the length of it, was a pretty good process. Mass DOT handled that process because it's their property. So for 6 or 7 years, this association, the North End, other communities were a part of that. They all reached a decision on what the height restriction should be there. Instead of the zoning height of 55 feet, it was agreed that the hotel, well, a building, could be as high as 85 feet at the North Street end and would be 1 story, I think, or 2 at the most at the handle, 1 story at the handle branch. That became the design guidelines for that property. Mass DOT's design guidelines. It became the rules for anyone bidding on that property. And there were a few bidders on that property. All of them lived within those height restrictions. And so the process seemed to work perfectly. and they selected a hotel. The hotel was approximately 85 feet in the proposal. It met the requirements, it met the goals of that community, of that public process. But then it moved into the BRA process. And it always gets screwed up when it moves into the BRA process. The BRA should never have accepted a proposal, and this is the Article 80 review that you were talking about. You start that Article 80 review by submitting your proposal. It's called a letter of intent to develop. They should never have accepted a proposal that violated the design guidelines, the public process, the bidding rules for that site. It violated everything. But typical BRA allowed that proposal to move forward. You mentioned the BCDC, Boston Civic Design Commission, approved it. The BCDC is administered by the BRA. So this is a violation of a good public process. And if we allow this to stand, we may as well just throw up our hands and not come to any more meetings, because public process is dead in the city of Boston.
Yeah.
And we have 3 elected officials, Representative Michaelwitz, Councilor LaMattina, and Senator Petrocelli, who all sent a letter supporting this higher height. Essentially, they're saying, we don't care about that several-year public process. But that's all I have to
No,
say.
thanks for the comments. And I just want to say, I do want to echo one of the things that I look at this as. You know, the BRA is doing a roadshow for reauthorization of their urban planning zones. That's very important, because without those zones, the BRA loses a significant amount of the power and the sort of star chamber quality that they have right now. Because once you go into the Article 80 process, it's sort of like the first thing they need to do is find a smoke-filled room, and they put everyone in there, the doors close, and you have no idea what goes on until it's done. And there are some of us who believe that maybe that should change. Maybe the BRA needs to reform. Maybe Mayor Walsh, who campaigned on reforming the BRA and folding it into other planning organizations, might actually want to take this opportunity. And I just think, you know, looking at everything that could happen, those of you in this room, I don't know how many know about the planning zone that the whole North End waterfront is in, all the way up to the Coast Guard station. That includes Sergeant's Wharf, Lewis Wharf. Every one of these parcels, Sergeant's is a great example. This could happen there. And you know, if you had the BRA owns that land right now, and they could have a process that just, you know, they just do what they want to do, and we don't have a whole lot of opportunity to say anything. So that's one of the reasons that this is an interesting discussion. I just wanted to put that out on the table. But I wanted to try to run through this pretty quickly, because one of the things I want to do is establish the interest of the room in discussing this and this parcel and the bigger projects like this. And so again, show of hands, how many people are interested in what happens, interested in the outcome of Parcel 9? So I would say, for the benefit of the camera, that's pretty much the entire room. So who of you supported the Haymarket Hotel project, you know, the one that was selected, and we're, you know, happy about that, before the redesign? Of those of you that were even aware of it, okay. So that's a smattering. And who supports the project after the redesign? Just for the camera, I want to say 0 hands have gone up. How important do you feel the Mass Historical letter of opposition is in all of this? They have created, say it creates an adverse effect. Pretty big, you know, about 30 to 50% of the room. How comfortable? Now, one of the things I mentioned is the Greenway press release is very interesting, because for some reason, possibly because Normandy Real Estate has a very bad PR firm that's working for them, it outlines all the cash contributions that they've been making. Sort of a bad move on their part, but at least it's transparency, and that's great, and thank you, Greenway, for putting the press release out that highlights all this, because we might not have known otherwise, or at least it may not have been as publicized otherwise. But there are several contributions. $25,000 to the Greenway, another $10,000 to the Beautification Committee, and some other things that may be coming down the road. So that, well, their contribution, I'll just leave it at that. How comfortable are people with these contributions that the Parcel 9 developer is making? There are 0 hands going up. How comfortable, I will say, did anyone's position on the project change after the letter that our local representatives wrote in support of the project? Okay, so no hands are going up. I'm going to skip that one. Well, I was going to say that, because you know what? The representatives that represent us, that often come to our meetings, Senator Petrocelli, and particularly Aaron Michaelwitz and Sal Amatina, really do spectacular things for the neighborhood and the area. So I don't want to sort of jump on them. I do concur with David that if something went wrong here, and I think arguably it did, it's with the BRA, not necessarily with our guys. But nonetheless, I want to ask, who is comfortable with the representatives jumping in here right now and writing a letter of support at this point? Okay, that's another 0 hands going up. How comfortable are you guys with the public process, before the BRA got involved, which David described? The public process was described by Mass DOT that Victor was a part of. Comfort level is, so it's about a quarter to 30% of the room. And how comfortable after the BRA took this process over? That's 0. Do you believe the BRA needs to have a more open process?
How about legal?
How about dismantling?
No, let's. The BRA has a new director who could actually change things.
We've had many new directors of the BRA.
Okay. I'm going to just, for the camera, say that a lot of hands went up when we said that we feel that we need to have a more open process. Only 2 more questions. Do you think that the process should include standardized rules and formulas for calculation of any payments to any neighborhood, including a standardized process for selection of the recipients of those payments? Do we think that ought to be standardized and formula-driven and transparent?
Yes.
No.
Really?
I think maybe it needs to be explained a little more.
Okay. It needs to be explained. There was about a quarter of the room was to a third of the room was saying yes, but any discussion on that? I mean,
Well, yeah.
Yes.
Well, you say money's contributed. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, no, just whatever your votes.
You say money's contributed to the neighborhood. Many of these large development projects should be contributing money to highway improvements, roadway improvements, utility improvements, and all those things, and public open space improvements. I'm afraid that when it goes to the neighborhood, who knows where the money's going. Now, I do think that, for instance, these massive projects out at Government Center and Government Center Garage and Boston Garden, all around us, you'll see them soon, by the way, that they should have funded not only the roadway improvements, we already have terrible roadway conditions without those projects, and they also should have funded open space, whether it's additional open space or improvements to the open space in our neighborhood, because there are going to be 10,000 more residents, plus thousands of office workers, plus hundreds of hotel guests, using the same amount of open space, the same parks we have now, and many of our parks are in intolerable condition. But so I don't want to say it just should go to the neighborhood. I think every project has different impacts, and I think those monies should be spent in ways that mitigate those impacts. And in some cases, that does mean money to the neighborhood. In some cases, it doesn't.
Right. And right now, there's only one formal BRA linkage, and that is for affordable housing. Interestingly, the BRA has put most of the affordable housing way at the end of transit lines.
Yeah.
Transit lines that no longer work. So one idea on the table that you mentioned is maybe there should be a linkage for public transit payment. And I would also say a linkage for open spaces. That's actually been something that Sal Lamatina has been trying to push for. A 2% bump in the levies to this linkage revenue that is taken, and that just be given to open spaces. I'm not sure that there's any activity on the MBTA funding, although I hope it starts soon because I agree that they probably need to figure out how to spend what they've got much better than they do now. But there certainly needs to be a long-term solution, or at least a plan for how it is we connect up these various neighborhoods. If we're going to put the offset, affordable housing at the end of a T line that is going to be shut down every week during a heavy winter, but not a whole lot heavier than 1996 when the T was never shut down. So, my last question is, what do you all think we as NEWRA should do next regarding this? And that's an open question for discussion. Nikki?
I'll answer it for everybody.
Yes.
I was one of the people who wrote a letter of objection after Normandy did the fast one and disobeyed the rules and raised the height on the hotel. And I'm pretty cross about it. I think we should do something. And I'm very glad, I'm very glad you're doing these sense of the meeting questions here. I would like to see a summary of these quick and dirty votes that you've been recording here and put in a letter that we send to the 3 representatives objecting to their overly rapid support of Normandy in this higher hotel without consulting the neighborhood.
Okay, thank
For
you.
starters.
Yeah, that's great. Nick, any other thoughts?
Yeah.
Diane?
Ford, I think there's one more step that the project has to go through, and can you help me with this, Victor, because I'm new. They have to get a variance to go to that height.
Oh, yes. Well, what they plan to do is have the area designated as a planned development area,
Right.
which of course the VRA does.
Oh,
And what does that do, Victor?
When it's a planned development area, all zoning restrictions go out the window, and the zoning becomes what they've described in the planned development area.
Or a little more smoke is put into the smoke-filled room that was previously described, so that no one can see anything that's going on.
Yeah.
So there's going to be one more meeting on this project, we think. So there's.
Well, I hope there'll be more than one meeting, because if I could.
Yeah, sure, please,
1
yes,
minute.
yes,
My last letter, I must have written, I don't know, 6 or 8 letters on this project over the years. The last one was a week ago to the Mass Historical Commission, reminding them as politely as I could that their regulations say there should be maximum public participation in the issue that they've raised. So please let me know when the public meeting is going to be held. I have not had a reply. In fact, I said we're having a residents association meeting on April 9th. May I have your response before then? I got no response. So there should be a public process regarding that issue, as well as the planned development
Maybe
issue.
the suggestion or the reminder of that can go into that letter that's mentioned. Diane, but then Phil needs to get in.
Okay.
So go ahead, Diane.
Just so people know, this
Holding you up.
proposed
Roll yourself up.
hotel will be higher than the parking garage adjacent to it, and it may be higher than the Millennium Hotel
By 30 feet.
It
by
is.
30 feet. Okay, so it's going to be very tall. And the north end, we will lose our site of Blackstone Street. It's going to negatively affect the landscape of Blackstone Street. And the push carts that have been there for, how long, 75 years? I know, I'm 68 years old, and I used to go there when I was 3, so they were there 65 years ago. They're going to create a tunnel for them. It's going to be a big shadow, and that hotel is going to overpower Blackstone Street, and we as North Enders are going to lose the view from the north end over to that historic district.
Which the one-story proposal largely, which people thought they were getting, is largely preserved. It may not have been perfect, but it was acceptable.
Right.
Right.
If the hotel's going to be built, that's my opinion. But I think what we should do is really be adamant against that height. And ask them to make it 55 feet.
Great.
The heights are, the garage is 85 feet, the Millennium Bostonian is 74 feet, and the The hotel has increased, is 103 feet.
103.
Gone from 84, which was consistent with the garage, which is 85. Gone from 84 to 103.
There you go.
So that's a percent. That's a pretty big percentage, and I would also say, you know, we've talked mainly about the project. We have talked a little bit about the monies that have floated around that are again highlighted in the Greenway press release. And you know, this is just a note to anyone from the PR firm for Normandy that's watching this tape. A really bad PR move is to have one of your executives, you know, pat themselves on the back for a $25,000 contribution to a $400,000 project that's going on in the North End. That's 6% for those math arithmetic fans out there. And that's like really like, okay, look at us. We want a huge boom up in this project, and we're going to throw a coin at you. And I just, you know, it's not a good PR move, frankly, and I think because beyond that, it's really sort of a slap in the face to the neighborhood, too.
And I'd also like to know,
But, well, I gotta let Phil in. He's been waiting, and then Dave.
I think people need to know the system here. Now, not the one you're talking about, because that's too late. But there's a bill being filed now.
Right.
If you approve X, Y, and Z in the community, and it goes to the board, lawyers are cute enough to defer, make the changes, and go back to the city hall or stuff, and do not have to come back to the community. I think you guys should support that bill, so that they have to come back to the community. If you did that in this case, they wouldn't have added that stuff without coming back to the community, if you follow what I'm saying.
Well, I do, except I think part of the issue was DOT ran a nice process. VRA, as David suggests, which usually doesn't, and
Well, that includes the BRA too.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's a good point, and we'll talk more about that, because maybe that's something that we should vote to support. We should talk about in the next meeting. David, you wanted to make a final
I just wanted to
comment?
add that most of the shadow will also fall on the Greenway. So I wonder what is thinking about Normandy's contribution to the Conservancy, what is the cost per square inch of shadow that's going to be on the Greenway?
Right. That's a very good point. Well,
Can I just give you guys a little
oh, sure.
piece of our mind, what we were thinking when we supported the letter?
That's only fair. Yes,
Okay,
please.
so back when it was the process, when there was two proposed projects, I believe Aaron actually supported one that was 100 feet.
Yes.
So he's never problem with 100 feet going up.
Yeah. There's no
When the
consistency.
80 feet won the bid, we were found, and then we heard they were going up, and we had a meeting with them, and we let them know that we were very upset with that. Kind of felt like they were trying to pull one over on NEWRA and Newnick. So in about a 2-month period of time, they came back to us in a way of making amends. They offered, you know, all these offsets with actually $25,000 in the Greenway we didn't even know about. The main thing we were excited about was the $10,000 for the North End Beautification Committee. I don't know if you guys know a lot what they do, because that's
But $10,000.
That's more than half of their budget.
But that doesn't matter. That's not the important number. $10,000 is with the number of keys that are increased. That's millions of dollars of extra revenue that they're paying $10,000 to essentially get a printing press to print $1 million. That's not what we should be doing.
We felt that they made amends with the offers that they offered the community, and it makes the community better, and it
I know
makes it
that
better.
you
That's what we felt.
did you ask any of us if the community felt that was a proper exchange?
Listen, I just wanted to make that, I just wanted to kind of.
I know, I'm not
If you
trying
guys
to-
want to sit down and talk about it, you guys can reach out to our office, we'll listen, our office is always open to sit down and talk about anything,
I
so.
think
our door's always open.
that's a great idea, and I didn't mean to put you on the hot seat, and I do thank you for stepping up and participating in the discussion.